In this movie, we're going to take that textured type treatment that we created in the previous movie, and we're going to get rid of the drop shadow and the skinny stroke, and we're going to replace it with these thicker strokes, both of which are entirely in back of the letters. So in other words, the texture inside the letters covers up the white stroke, which in turn covers up the black stroke. And in order to achieve that effect, we have to take a very different approach. So here's what we're going to do. I'll switch back to my image so far, and I'll go ahead and twirl open this layer and the clipping group inside of it by Alt-clicking or Option-clicking on the triangle in front of the layer name. And then I'll go ahead and click on the image and Shift-click on this editable text. And I'm going to drag both of these items out of the clipping group. And that goes ahead and returns them to normal everyday objects. So we're no longer masking the image inside the letters. Then I'm going to take the image and pop it to the top by dragging it up the stack. Now we need to take this linked image and we need to embed it inside this file. And you do that by clicking on the image to select it. And then you go up to the control panel and you click on the embed button. And that turns that photograph into a native Illustrator object. We're no longer linked to a file on disk. Now what we need to do is make sure the swatches panel is up on screen. If it isn't for you, go to the window menu and choose the swatches command. And then you want to drag the image and drop it into the swatches panel like so. And that'll create a new pattern swatch. Now at this point, we probably want to rename the pattern swatch. So press Ctrl-Shift-A or Command-Shift-A on the Mac to deselect the image so you don't go messing it up by adding a pattern to it. Now double-click on the little pattern swatch in order to bring up the pattern options panel here inside Illustrator CS6. I'm going to rename this pattern Clouds, and that's it. Now if you're working along with me, you can go ahead and close the pattern options panel and then press the Escape key in order to return to the illustration. Now at this point, we have two versions of this embedded image, one that we're seeing here inside the document window, and the other of which is defined as a pattern here inside the swatches panel. We don't need them both, so go ahead and click on the image to select it, and then press the backspace key or the delete key on the Mac to get rid of it. Now what I want you to do is click on the big letters with the black arrow tool to select them. Then let's go ahead and switch over to the Appearance panel once again by choosing Appearance from the window menu. Notice in my case, I've already got a stroke and a fill that have been added to this text. If you're not seeing a stroke or a fill, just go ahead and click on the Add New Stroke icon in the bottom left corner of the panel. And I'm going to change the fill by clicking on a little swatch there and choosing the Clouds pattern for my swatch list. And then I'm going to increase this stroke value from 1 point to 8 points. So we have this super thick stroke. Problem is, that looks like garbage because the stroke is centered on the letter form outlines. And that means we're encroaching into the characters, which is never a good idea. What you should be able to do is click on the word stroke and just switch the alignment option to outside. But when you're working with text, that option is dimmed. So instead what you do is you grab the stroke and you move it below the fill like so. So just drag it down and that moves the stroke behind the letters, which looks so much better. Now what I want you to do is click on a stroke to make it active and then click once again on Add New Stroke to create a copy of it. Let's change this stroke to white this time around. And I'm going to change the line weight value to 4 points, like so. And we end up achieving the final effect. So I'll press Ctrl-Shift-A, Command-Shift-A on a Mac. And what we've managed to do is create a much better effect, in my opinion. But there is one problem remaining. Notice up here at the top of the A and the R, we're seeing a little bit of the bottom of the image repeated at the top of those letters. And that is not something we want. So we can move that pattern inside the letters in a kind of a strange way. You click on the letters to select them, as I have here. Then double-click on the black arrow tool, which Illustrator calls the selection tool, in order to bring up the Move dialog box. What we want to do here is we don't want to transform the object. We want to leave those letters where they were, and we want to just transform the patterns. And so in our case, we want to leave the horizontal value set to 0, and we want to take the vertical value down. So a negative vertical value ends up scooting the selection upward. So I'm going to take that value down even farther, and notice I'm pressing Shift down arrow to lower that value as well as raise the pattern in the background. Got the preview checkbox turned on, which is very important. You can see at -100, we end up taking the clouds up too far, so now the top of the clouds are repeating at the bottom of the letters. So now I know -100 is too far in the other direction, so I'll just split the difference by changing this value to -50 and pressing the Tab key in order to preview the results. Then I'll click on the OK button in order to accept that change and press Control-Shift-A or Command-Shift-A on a Mac to deselect my text. And that, folks, is how you combine text with a photographic image and great-looking strokes here inside Illustrator.